what we do here at Rights
Yeah.
for Vapors, it was National Non-Smoking Week here in Canada. We've done a couple of these webinars, and I know that we are crunched for time, so we have a half an hour with you. Thank you. So we do have a few attendees, but we are going to replay this on YouTube. Just for anyone that doesn't know, we have with us Dr. Konstantinos Farsalinos, and he is here to talk about his groundbreaking review about flavors, which is really, really important, especially here in Canada right now, where we just are waiting to see what Health Canada is going to do with flavors. With us, we still don't have a ban. There is no there's no deadline, there's no date given to us. It's just kind of stalled. However, you did all this research. I guess you did a lot of this during COVID, and put together this incredible study, like a review of all these studies. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. To be honest, everyone who is involved in the e-cigarette history, whether he's a scientist or a user, knows and understands how controversial the issue of flavors, I mean, the issue of e-cigarettes is in general extremely controversial, and everyone knows that. But the issue of flavors is the most controversial aspect of an already controversial story, which is electronic cigarettes. So, and it's more than obvious that it was just a matter of time. All these past years, that was my faith, that I was very confident that there would come the time when flavors would be under attack. And we know very well, if someone has been a user, and I'm a user of electronic cigarettes, I remind everyone, in case they don't know, that I've been a long-term smoker, and I have tried repeatedly to quit, either by myself, but also with all available smoking cessation medications. And I mean bupropion, varenicline, and even NRTs, nicotine replacement therapies. I was repeatedly successful, but only for a short period of time. I always elapsed after 3 to 5 months. 5 months, I think, was the longest period that I remained smoke-free using varenicline. So in 2012, when I started my first research on electronic cigarettes, I decided to try an electronic cigarette, and I managed to quit, and I'm smoke-free for the next, I mean, it's almost 10 years now. It's 9 years and 11 months. So everyone who has used electronic cigarettes understands perfectly the importance of flavors. So, for example, for myself, of course, I initiated the cigarette use with tobacco flavors, and I managed to quit. But very, very shortly after being an established e-cigarette user, I switched to different non-tobacco flavors. And that, I think, is a very important issue, because by using flavors which are less and less resembling tobacco cigarettes, that helps you stay away from tobacco cigarettes. I think it will prevent relapse. So over time, and we have seen it through research, that vapers are switching from tobacco to non-tobacco flavors. And according to their own statements and testimonies, they flavors, non-tobacco flavors, play a very important role in keeping themselves away from tobacco cigarettes. This is now under threat. It's been under threat starting in the US, but also in general in North America, so including Canada. It's now moving to Europe. It's being one of the main arguments of the WHO to restrict flavors. We all understand the limitations. I mean, let's be honest. Flavors is not only something that adults want to use, but it's also something that adolescents want to use. So yes, there is the aspect of attractability for adolescents, but at the same time, we need to remember that there is no human, independent of age, who wants to use something which is flavorless, something that does not provide a positive experience. So I don't know anyone who wants to eat flavorless food. I don't know anyone who wants to drink flavorless drinks. That's human nature. That's the normal physiology of the brain. So everyone wants flavors. Now, the issue is how are we going to balance this? And I think there are many things that we can do before even thinking of restricting flavors, because we need first to think of the unintended consequences. And there are many unintended consequences. For example, you can't basically ban flavors. You may ban flavors from electronic cigarettes, but the flavors used in electronic cigarettes are flavors that are coming from the food industry. So by definition, they are available in the market. So what vapors are going to do, they are going to seek for food approved flavorings that are sold in food approved packaging and bottles, and they are going to just mix and match. But this creates at the same time an unregulated sort of semi-legal market, because no one can ban you from using raw ingredients and creating the liquid that you want to use. But at the same time, you don't have the end product, and you cannot regulate something that is not available as an end product, or something that is not sold as is for use with electronic cigarettes. Another issue is, of course, black market by itself, which is going to flourish, but also the fact that not all food approved flavors are suitable for inhalation. And that's a very serious aspect, because when you are banning flavors, and we know that vapors are going to seek flavors, they're going to find flavors. The issue is that the initiative is on the individual consumer. It's not on the industry or on the regulator side to control the market. And that can create even hazards for consumers. So the regulators need to understand that it's a decision with adverse consequences in terms of public health from many aspects. Additionally, as I said, there are many things that we can do to discourage adolescents from using electronic cigarettes. Of course, the main issue is to implement in reality the ban on the sales to youth, which is regulated both in Canada and in Europe, also in the US, but it's not being properly implemented. Of course, we can target marketing, we can enforce fines to those who sell to minors. There are many, many things we can do. I think proper education and balanced and honest education and communication is extremely important for any public health issue, let alone for such an issue. But I think that what regulators need to do is understand that it's not an easy decision. It's not a decision with only benefits. In fact, it's a decision which will overall probably have an adverse effect on public health. And we need to think of adult smokers who need flavors, and they need more than tobacco flavors. Let's not forget that everything, any flavor in cigarettes is an added flavor. The electronic cigarette by itself is flavorless. So whether it's tobacco or non-tobacco, everything is added flavoring compounds, a mixture of flavoring compounds. So as I said, we know and we've studied the experience of vapors. We know that the vast majority switch to non-tobacco flavors. Over the past few years, people even start using e-cigarettes without using tobacco flavors. They have to be there. The industry can also do a lot of things. For example, one of the main issues which I have observed, especially in North America, is the issue of packaging and labeling. I think there are a lot of things that the industry can do to improve the issue of, in my opinion, inappropriate packaging and labeling in some cases, not in all cases. But there are companies who are.
I was just going to tell you, here in Canada, we do have strict laws on packaging and labeling, what e-liquids are called, what can and cannot be on the bottles. Our fines are very, very punitive. And if I'm not mistaken, it's either between $50,000 to $500,000 and time in prison. So we have that label thing here in Canada. We have the nicotine cap, we have age. None of this is being enforced. Like first of all, the worst enforcement is for kids, for people who sell to kids here in Canada.
Well, and that's an issue. You have the law, you can't implement it, then you add additional restrictions by making but you are making the product less appealing, less attractive to those to whom they are intended and they were invented for, and that's the smokers, the adult smokers. So, I mean, the regulators need to understand you can't just add restrictions and at the end have a product that no smoker wants to use, because that's not the intended use of electronic cigarettes. Electronic cigarettes are intended to be used as a smoking substitute. When you basically compromise their efficacy, you compromise their appeal, their acceptability of use, you compromise the self-preference, which is the main criterion for choosing the electronic cigarette for a smoker. You're making it a useless product, and then you're going to start saying that people can't quit with that, so it's a useless product. Well, you're making it a useless product, and they have to start implementing already established laws, and we're having the same issue in Europe. We have a regulation, we have the ban on the sales to youth. I think that in Europe, the products which are made in Europe, I must say that they are in a pretty reasonable position in terms of not being kid-friendly. We don't have kid-friendly packaging at the same level that the US, unfortunately, has. Still, no one is satisfied. The issue is that you also need to look at the evidence. We haven't seen any cigarette use epidemic, as they call it, in youth. We haven't seen anything like that in Europe. I don't think you've seen that in Canada. There is experimental use. I mean, kids experiment with everything. Of course, we're not satisfied with that. We want to discourage kids from even experimenting with these products. But let's be honest, we're not seeing a regular use by kids who don't have any smoking history. So we need to be reasonable, nothing more. We just need to be reasonable, look at the data and look at those who experience benefits from electronic cigarette use, which are the adult smokers, the smokers who are candidates to become cigarette users and quit smoking, and of course, those former smokers who have already quit smoking with electronic cigarettes. That's going to be a big setback, It's going to create relapse conditions for former smokers. We have to be very, very careful.
I totally agree with you. What we're seeing here in Canada, and one of the things that I wanted to follow up on, you said about choice and autonomy, because one of the beautiful things about vaping is we have this many flavors because the user, the addict, has control over how they reduce the harm in their addiction. And that's from device choice to nicotine strength to also flavors. So what in our proposed regulations for this flavor ban, so I'm glad you're sitting because you're going to laugh. Not only did they tell us we can only use mint, menthol, or tobacco, but our public health unit, Health Canada, went, I don't know, they went 50 steps forward and said, here are 40 molecules you can use for tobacco, and here are 44 for mint. So not only, and on top of that, exactly. Whatever.
So they are creating the recipes themselves, you mean?
Wait, it
right?
gets better. Eight of those have been banned for use in other jurisdictions, including England. And then on top of that, they have created a sensory regulation where if something smells appealing, they can ban it. So
which is subjective by definition.
Absolutely.
When I have smokers who ask me what they should use, what kind of a cigarette should they choose, you know what the answer is? You have to try it. You have to try it because the satisfaction is a very subjective thing. There may be a liquid which I love, and you may hate it. At the same time, it's the same exact liquid. Someone will hate it, someone will love it. So the only criterion is try it and buy it if you like it. I mean, satisfaction is such a subjective issue. Smelling nice and appealing. I mean, what does that mean? There is no objective definition of what smelling appealing means.
I know. We're going to be the first country with vape sommeliers with accreditation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here in Canada, like I'm worried. I know the people that I help. I know the people that I see, they will return to smoking. And there was one of the researchers here that you talked about is in the review, you highlighted the work of Professor David Levy, who developed the smoking and vaping model. So you broke it down here. It was a release that Jake sent out to everybody here in Canada. And if we applied this model of all cigarette smokers were to switch to nicotine, and we applied it in Canada, 130,000 deaths would be avoided between 2012 and 2052. That's a lot of people because we have over 40,000 people who die of tobacco-related illness. And it would, which equals 2.5 million life years.
Yeah, exactly. I know the modeling by David Levy, and he's trying to apply the same models to other countries in order to provide, a perspective to the regulators, because that's the main issue. Explain to the regulators what's happening, what are we missing, because we are, I think that almost globally, I would only use as an exception the UK, we are missing a historical opportunity to make smoking obsolete. And we are doing that by actively discouraging smokers from switching to a less harmful alternative. This is unheard of. I mean, it's not at all unheard of. We've seen the same opposition with harm reduction for opioid users.
Yeah,
it has happened in the past. But this time it's an even worse mistake, because we have 1 billion smokers. So any mistakes in harm reduction for smoking is by far, any mistake is by far more lethal than the mistakes made for opioid use. Unfortunately, that's the reality. And unfortunately, we are missing a golden opportunity to make smoking obsolete. I think that if the regulators and the authorities globally were maybe slightly less reluctant to support e-cigarettes, not even be as supportive as the UK authorities are, just slightly less, I think we would have seen a revolution in the reduction of smoking rates. We're not seeing that. Instead, we are seeing setbacks. I mean, look at India, a country with a huge smoking problem, a huge tobacco use problem, and they have banned e-cigarettes. They even did not allow Scandinavian snus to be sold, which is almost harmless. I'm not going to say it's harmless, but it's an almost harmless oral tobacco product. And they are selling the most lethal, the most carcinogenic oral tobacco products in India. Well, no one understands why they're doing this, but it doesn't make any sense, No, the WHO is, of course, a strong opponent. I mean, we know that. It's been a tradition right now. But I think it's all politics and not so much health, unfortunately.
I feel the same way here, and I do feel that a lot of people here in Canada feel the exact same way. Just this week, we're seeing studies coming out from pharmaceutical and pharmacists in the pharmaceutical industry making statements that only pharmacies should be able to sell electronic cigarettes and only pharmacists should control it. From your personal experience, because you said you've been vaping for 11 years and 8 months, am I right? Or 11 years and 9 months? How
11 years and 11 months.
Oh, 11. Perfect. How important is the role of a vape shop when it comes to this? Like, that is also very important. Like, the community, if it, like, I'm sure in Greece, you didn't go to the pharmacy to pick up your first electronic cigarette.
Exactly. And unfortunately, this is another setback because that reminds me of the debate within the European Union in 2013, before the Tobacco Products Directive was created and voted in the European Parliament. It was the same debate of medicalizing, let's say, of applying a medicine regulation for electronic cigarettes, sort of a prescription, sort of a recommendation by a physician, which will be then available. The product will be available in pharmacies. We had the same debate, but that was 2013. You know, it was a very long time ago. I think this is a setback, and I'm seeing in the last couple of years a very big setback globally concerning electronic cigarettes. There is a very coordinated attack against electronic cigarettes. They don't even understand that this compromises the health of successful switchers, people who have successfully quit smoking with electronic cigarettes, let alone the discouragement of smokers to try the product. Unfortunately, this has created a lot of misinformation. Most smokers believe that e-cigarettes are equally or even more harmful than smoking. You know, you can't have any stronger misinformation than that. It makes zero sense. But you know, people don't think usually. They just accept what the authorities, what someone who is respectful is saying. Unfortunately, it's a kind of a intimidation, fear-mongering campaign. I don't know, or maybe I have some suspicion where it is coming from. Let's be honest, from some billionaires, some foundations or whatever. But this is becoming now seriously a big problem, and it's becoming a big threat for the product and for smokers and for former smokers. There are millions of people around the world who have quit with e-cigarettes. No one thinks about them. No one cares about them. No one understands the benefit that they have experienced. They are not providing the tools for these people to control matters of their own health. This is against the Ottawa Declaration for Health Promotion of the WHO in 1986.
Thank you. And why does 5.1 supersede the Ottawa Declaration, I forget what it's called, the Ottawa Charter? That's what it is. I came across that yesterday.
Yes, right.
Where
right.
People are supposed to, yet even today, as we speak, there is a conference in Canada run by someone, and people who have any support, doctors included, have been kicked out. Banned from participating as an attendee. I was banned.
That's transparency and that's dialogue. You know, that's transparency and that's dialogue. You see.
I just want to say, I know you're very short on time here. I want to say is that the value of someone who smokes is reduced. And it is not, they do not talk to smokers. They don't ask about smokers. All they care about is people not starting to smoke, and they've given up. So once you get to 25, they don't care anymore. And that's what the problem is.
But you have decades or decades in front of you ahead that you're going to have people experiencing the adverse health effects of smoking. You can't stop caring about them. That's impossible to happen. You have to think about them. They are a burden to society. You can't just abandon adults and think about kids only.
But they are doing
it. I mean, there is no way that they cannot find the right balance, the perfect balance. It's just a matter of being, open-minded, look at the totality of evidence, and of course, not be compromised by a disruptive technology, because let's be honest, this is a disruptive technology, and it's a technological product with a huge development over the past few years. I mean, remember how e-cigarettes were, 9 years, 10 years ago that I quit smoking. And where are we today? The level of satisfaction, the level of being able to a substitute for smoking by providing enough nicotine, by providing a positive experience to the smokers who get a similar positive experience from smoking. That's a tremendous development, a tremendous advancement, advance for these products.
I want to add
And that's
sorry,
what
I wanted to
happens with
add to
technology
that.
products.
I wanted to add to that is that advancement of technology and that innovation continuing to grow didn't happen in a pharmaceutical lab. It happened by a collective experience of vapors around the world sharing and challenging each other. The amount of regulations, not only in flavor bans, but in a lot of other things for here, we have childproofness, all this stuff, has put a hinder and has tried to put the brakes on creating an even safer electronic cigarette. So as we start adding regulations and trying to allow pharmaceutical companies to steal this technology, instead of being part of it, and that is where the biggest problem is, because people who smoked made this better. One man invented it, but an entire community of former smokers made it what it is today. And now pharma is stepping in and trying to take that away. And that is where my frustration adds.
And that was not the tobacco industry. That's something extremely important.
Yes.
It was not the tobacco industry that created the product. It was not the tobacco industry that was responsible for the evolution of the products. It was the independent industry, and of course, a big role was played by the vapors themselves. And vapors, we know, they don't have any conflict of interest. You know, they're not involved as in e-cigarettes as a profession. They're not getting any financial. They don't have any financial motive or incentive. The experience of the vapors was the driving force for the evolution of the products. And it was not coming from the industry, from the tobacco industry especially. It was coming from the independent, small and medium-sized corporations, which are much more flexible, much easier to change. And of course, we need regulation, there is no doubt. But the regulation should be reasonable, should be realistic, should be very, very different from tobacco cigarettes. We can't have regulations identical to tobacco cigarettes. It makes no sense.
Amen. Dr. Farsalinos, thank you so much.
I have to leave.
I know you have to leave, but thank you so much. I hope one day we can pick up this conversation again. We can do something else. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. I am so honored that you were here. And thank you to everybody. And we're going to pop this online too, okay? Yasu.
Okay, bye. Yeah.